All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jackie Pratt, and I'm the Senior Product Manager here at Capture Higher Ed. Thank you for joining our webinar here today. Just wanted to go over a few things before we go ahead and get started. All of our listeners, you are in listen-only mode. So if you do have any questions, please type them into the questions tab on the control panel. I will be monitoring the questions throughout the webinar, so we can make sure we get all of those answered for you. Today, our presenter is John Foster. He is our Senior Data Analyst here at Capture, and he knows all things related to our Envision product. John, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and get started?
Sure thing. Good afternoon, everybody. John Foster. I'm a data analyst and a Envision product manager. If you have questions about Envision, ask them now, or you can also hit me up afterward, and be glad to talk through anything that needs further explanation. With that, let's get looking at some things that features of Envision that maybe you didn't know about. The first one that we're starting with, you don't know about because it is still in development. But later on, for the current year, we are going to start including predictions on SAT, ACT, and GPA to show what that's likely to look like in your enrollment class. So for our enrollment models, in addition to the group level enrollment of how many students are going to enroll, you'll also get to know what the quality of those students are, to give you a fuller picture of what your enrollment class is likely to look like, both in size and in quality. Another one that you may not know about because it's brand new is that all the variables make the model. So a question that we had a lot over the last year was, which of my variables are in the model? Is there any way to show me that? And there were some technical reasons that we were unsure how to really address that question, but we figured it out. And really it comes down to any variable you give us that is usable, is comparable over time, and has been coded in the same way year to year, then we're going to include that in the model. We're going to we have some algorithms that we can use to compress that down and get use out of every variable you give us. And we're also going to report to you the importance of those features. So here is a sample graph from our flow state instance that shows a graph like that of the feature importance that they sent us. So the ones that go to the right here are things that have a positive relation, and the ones that go to the left have a negative relation. So what's one with a negative relation? These ones down at the bottom, I know that the printing's awfully small, but those are distance measures. So the closer the student is to campus, the more likely they are to enroll. Up at the top are things like campus visit, athlete, source of ACT. So this gives you an idea of the way the features are playing into your model, as well as some actionable information. You may not be able to take action on all of these, but some of these you can. Knowing that campus visit is a major indicator, is an encouragement to really try to push students towards visiting campus. That if they visit your campus, they're more likely to be sold and likely to enroll. Or seeing that the source ACT is more positive than source SAT, which is source SAT down here, or PSAT, gives you an idea that maybe you should buy the bulk of your names using the ACT. So trying to give you more information that you can use to take action. So that, this is definitely in response to something that our partners have said they wanted. Another new feature that is new for this year is taking into account deposits. There are some reasons that made this difficult to make good group level as well as individual level predictions when we included a deposit, but we have figured out how to do that in a way that improves both our individual level predictions as well as our group level predictions for our enrollment models. essentially, it comes down to how many students you've deposited at this point in at this date in previous years. So if you are a little behind that, it's going to bring down your model. If you're ahead of that, it's going to increase your projection. So this gives you a good idea of how you stand compared to previous years as well. The other nice thing about this is your models are going to improve over time. So we you make predictions early on in the year based on the students who you've admitted at that point, and those predictions are going to improve over time and ultimately converge on the correct total enrollment amount. All right, so those are the things that are some new factors for our 2018 models, the ones that we are building right now. Do you have any questions so far on that? All right, let's move on to some things that have already existed in our models, but maybe we're not kind of overlooked, but things that we think are pretty cool. So one thing is we can adjust the probability to get the probability, adjust students by the amount of probability you want them to increase their likelihood to enroll. So an example here, again, our faux state example, we're starting with a prediction of 1,015 students, and we say, oh man, we really need 10 more students to meet our class. How can we adjust our discretionary scholarship fund, the aid that we have control over? How can we adjust that in order to get 10 more students? Well, the way to do it is toggling here instead of the default is dollar adjustment. So and that's usually how we've demoed this, is with a dollar adjustment. You say, let's give $1,000 more to 200 students, and what will that give us? Which is a useful way to look at it, but this probability is an alternate way to do it. So if you want 10 more students, you can say, all right, we want to increase everybody who we adjust by 1% more likely to enroll. And we're going to do that to 1,000 students. So 1% of 1,000 is 10 students. And so from there you can say, okay, these are the adjustments we need to make in order to get 10 more students to enroll in our class. So that's a pretty cool way to tweak the aid that you're currently considering offering. Or you can also do this late in the cycle to say, we're really a little bit low compared to what we need to do. We're willing to spend maybe a couple $100,000 more in financial aid in order to meet our class. Where do we spend that money the best?
Hey, John, we have a question.
Yes.
How many different times can you make adjustments throughout the year?
These sort of adjustments you can make really an unlimited number of times, because this is on your end. In terms of iterations throughout the year, we encourage schools to send us for our enrollment and admissions models, applicant models. We encourage maybe about once a month is about a good schedule, other than like really around that for an enrollment model, around near that May 1st deadline. Leading up to that, you might want to do it every week or so. But so that we say somewhere between 10 and 15 iterations. But in terms of the adjustments and how many different ways you can tweak this, that's kind of unlimited. On your end, you can tweak this at any number of ways to get it to meet the needs of your class. So how many enrollments you need within the financial aid budget that is acceptable. And so once you've reached that amount that you want, then you can send out your aid offers, as well as send that amount back through to us, and we can give you an updated predicted net revenue and aid A prediction. Does that answer?
Yep.
Okay. So speaking of net tuition revenue predictions, that's another thing that we think is kind of a cool feature of this model that maybe gets a little bit overlooked. So in our enrollment plus financial aid models, obviously we have the predicted number of enrolled students and predicted yield, and we also make these predictions down here that can be pretty useful to say, here's the amount of aid that we're actually probably going to spend on these students. Obviously, if you offer 73 million in aid, not everybody's going to take you up on it. And so, given the students that we predict are likely to enroll, this is actually what you're probably going to spend, is around 21 million, with a predicted net revenue of 17 million. And from that, also the predicted discount rate. So to give you, again, the idea of whether you're likely to meet your class and whether you're going to meet those other goals of staying within your aid budget and having an acceptable discount rate. Another cool feature that only a couple schools have taken us up on is we can build in showing the cumulative deposits over time. So if in your data you send us the deposit date along with your students, then we can calculate this graph, and this will be on your dashboard. So this gives you an idea of how you stack up compared to other years. At this point in time, how many deposits do you have compared to other years? Giving you that idea of how you stack up against previous years, whether you're ahead, behind, whether you're in good shape or you need to adjust and make some changes. Along those same lines, there's another way we look at it, and that's the cumulative enrollments over time. So if we have an admitted date or acceptance date, then we can calculate this graph. And this is especially useful because the way we make predictions is it changes over time. Early on in the cycle, we're only predicting maybe a couple hundred students are going to enroll out of the students who you've already admitted. So that I think is a key feature that we could probably communicate a little bit better, is that our models are not making a prediction of what your ultimate enrollment total is going to be. It's the prediction of, out of the students you've already admitted, how many are going to enroll. But this tells you how that stacks up against previous years. So if you look at, say here on March 1st, you could say, if you have a prediction of 1,000, but you're like, well, really 1,400 is what we're shooting for. You see, okay, actually 1,000 is ahead of previous years out of students who we've admitted by this point. So even though that number that is 400 short of what you're shooting for and what you think is going to be the ultimate size of your class, this tells you that, okay, you're on track to hit more than 1,400 if that's what you're predicting. So you take the prediction, group level prediction at that point, and see how it matches up against previous years. So that gives a better idea of how much you stack up against previous years, and again, like our enrollment models tell you, either like, hey, we're in good shape, we can rest a little bit easier, or we're a little behind and we need to take action either by admitting more students or communicating more heavily with the students who are likely to enroll, or by offering more financial aid. It gives you that early warning sign to take action in order to meet your class. Because ultimately that's what we want. We want you to use this information to meet your class and make your goals.
I do have one question. I think it's related to the graph that you're just on. So the question is, does that mean as I admit more students, my enrollment predictions can change?
Yes, your enrollment prediction will change over time and almost always go up. So early in the cycle, so let's just follow one of these graphs to say, here early December, we'd probably be predicting somewhere around 300 some odd students are going to enroll out of those students who you've admitted, right? If you've admitted, let's say, 1,000 students, and we're saying 300 of them are going to enroll. With rolling admissions, as you admit more students, the number who enroll is going to go up. And so I think there's been some confusion over this in the last year, where we predicted something that's well short of what they're expecting as their total class. But that's because we're saying at this point in time, if you did not admit any more students, if you didn't take any more action, here's what your class would look like. After you've admitted all your students, then that's the full size prediction. That is going to be your full admitted class. So it's a little bit trickier with rolling admissions, but this helps answer those questions. With batch admissions, it's very straightforward. If you admit all your students at once, we're going to give you that one prediction of how many enrolled students you're going to have. Which leads me to number 8, the hypothetical admits, which is a feature that a couple schools have used, but we think could be more powerful. So you can choose when you submit an iteration to us. The normal way is to submit the students who you have admitted, and then we make a prediction of how many are going to enroll. An alternate way to do it is to submit us a list of students who you're considering admitting, and then at that point we can say this is what your class would look like in that case. This is probably most useful for batch admissions to run through a couple different iterations before you send out admit letters, but it is also potentially useful for rolling admissions, especially a more selective school that is not going to admit everyone who meets certain criteria. Do we have another question there? No? So
I was on mute. Yes, we do have another question just came in. How can the Envision prediction be helpful for a school using rolling admissions?
Sure. So using rolling admissions, let's go back to this. So if you give us the acceptance or admit date, then we can tell you precisely how you match up with previous years. But even without that, we can give you an idea, by looking at the predicted yield rate. Let's show where we have the predicted yield rate. So we all along the way we're going to be giving a predicted yield rate, and looking at that, that's going to give you an idea of whether you're ahead or behind of your goal or compared to previous years. So that as rolling admissions, it gives you this idea of whether you're on track to meet that ultimate goal, even though the predictions we're making early on in the cycle are not for the entire class. It gives you an idea out of the students you've admitted how you're likely to stand, and then that also can inform you of how many and which students you should admit from that point on in order to get ultimately up to the point where you need. Hope that answers the question. If not, ask another follow-up question. I'd be happy to answer that. So another feature that is new this year, improved this year anyway, is using CBE behavioral data in our applicant models. So for schools where we have some 1 year of CBE data, as well as email data where we've done email campaigns, we can use that to inform our predictions of who is most likely to apply. And back testing that against how we would have done this year, that gets our accuracy in those applicant models up near 99%. So this is something that is totally unique, that we're the only ones doing. So we not only use demographic data that the school sends us relate to the student. We append contextual data about that student, and then we also are the only ones using behavioral data. And what are students actually demonstrating an interest in? And just beyond who they are, but actually what their behavior shows us, I think is going to give us more accurate predictions than anybody else can do, specifically in the applicant models at this stage. And number 10 is kind of cheating, but I didn't want to leave out the most important features. We're talking about some things that maybe are a little bit overlooked or not used as much, but let's still talk about the big things that an Envision predictive model can do for you. Individual level predictions that help you target the students who are most likely to apply and enroll. That group level enrollment prediction that tells you whether you're on track to meet your enrollment or need to take additional action in order to meet it. The individual financial aid adjustment, optimizing at the individual level what scholarship or discretionary financial aid it'll take to get that student to your school. And then ultimately, to sum up, what we're trying to offer is to give you intelligent information on how to make 3 key decisions: who to admit, who to communicate with, and how much financial aid to give them. So ultimately, that's the biggest feature of Envision. This other stuff we think is also helpful, but don't want to lose sight of that. So that concludes our overview of the 10 features maybe you didn't know about. Do we have additional questions?
No additional questions at this point. Thank you, John, for hosting this webinar. It was very informative. For everyone that is online, we are going to be sending our recording and email with a few follow-up notes for you. So feel free to share that with your team. Let us know if you do have any additional questions or if you need any further clarification on anything that John presented today. So thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.